It began with a soft chime, almost delicate, almost polite. The kind of doorbell sound you'd expect from a sleepy countryside cottage, not from the ominous silence that cloaked the neighborhood that night. It was 12:04 a.m. At first, Mia thought she imagined it. The late hour, the silence, the way her living room light flickered once, all of it blurred into an eerie haze. But the doorbell rang again. And again. Softly. Deliberately. She shouldn't have answered. She really shouldn't have answered. Mia had moved into the house just a week ago. Nestled on the outskirts of town, far enough from the main road to enjoy uninterrupted silence, yet close enough that she didn't feel completely cut off. It was what she needed, or at least what she thought she needed, after the chaos of her life back in the city. It was an impulsive move, driven by something she couldn't quite explain. A sense of dread had clung to her for weeks, a feeling like something was following her. At first, she blamed it on stress, or maybe the haunting voicemail she had received 2 months earlier from an unlisted number. The voice had whispered just one sentence. "Don't answer the door after midnight." She deleted it instantly, brushed it off. But here she was now, watching the clock blink 12:04 as the doorbell rang again. She froze. The hallway light stretched long shadows across the floorboards, and the silence that followed the chime felt unnatural, like the house itself was holding its breath. She crept toward the front window, careful not to make a sound, and peeked through the side curtain. No one was there. Just the porch bathed in dim moonlight, her flower pots unmoved, her doormat curling at the corner. The old brass doorbell glinted faintly. A third chime. Softer. Longer. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She almost jumped out of her skin. Heart hammering, she rushed over and snatched it up. Unknown number. One new message. "Why are you looking through the window, Mia?" Her blood ran cold. She dropped the phone. The message hadn't even been typed. It was a voice note. With shaking hands she tapped it. There was only static for the first few seconds. Then, a slow, gurgling whisper. "I saw you." The lights flickered again. This time they didn't come back on. The house plunged into darkness. She backed away from the kitchen, her feet dragging over the wooden floor, hands groping for the flashlight she kept on the counter. But something else buzzed, her landline. The old rotary phone in the hallway, which she'd never even used, let out a harsh shriek. She hesitated. Then, as though compelled by something deeper than logic, she lifted the receiver. A distorted voice. "Don't answer the door. Midnight has passed. You've been marked." Click. A loud knock echoed through the house. Not the doorbell. Not a polite chime. A knock. Slow. 3 heavy pounds. Mia screamed. She stumbled back into the living room, the phone still clutched in her shaking hand. She pressed herself against the far wall, staring at the front door, barely visible in the dim light of the moon filtering through the curtains. Then, a voice. Sweet. Gentle. Almost melodic. A child. "Excuse me. I'm lost. I need help." She didn't move. Didn't breathe. It was a trap. Her instincts screamed it. Another voice joined in. This one older, raspier. "Mia, you promised you'd let us in." She hadn't spoken those words, hadn't made any such promise. But deep inside something twisted. A memory. Faint. Like a dream she'd forgotten. Had she said something once? The knocking turned into scraping. Long fingernails dragging across wood. Then the sound of breathing, close, shallow, as though someone was standing inches from the other side. Suddenly, a loud thud hit the door, like a body slamming against it. Mia snapped into motion. She dashed up the stairs, taking 2 at a time, nearly tripping on the last step. She slammed her bedroom door shut and locked it. Her flashlight beam trembled as she scanned the room. Empty. She ducked beneath the window, not wanting to risk being seen. Her phone vibrated again. Unknown number. Another voice message. This one was different. Clear. A familiar voice. Her own. "I let them in." Her chest tightened. She shook her head violently. "No. No, I didn't." Then a whisper behind her ear. "But you will." She spun around. No one. The temperature dropped sharply. Her breath misted in the air. The walls began to creak. Her flashlight flickered violently and then died. Darkness swallowed her. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Then a sound, soft footsteps inside the house. Moving. Deliberate. Up the stairs. The floorboards groaned under each step. She covered her mouth. Something brushed against her bedroom door. A click. The handle turning slowly. But the door was locked. Silence. Then a soft tap on the wood. And the voice returned. "You locked the door, Mia. But the invitation has already been made." The door began to shake. Not violently. Not like someone trying to force their way in. But gently, rhythmically, as though something on the other side was laughing. Then a chime. The doorbell. Again. But this time it was coming from inside the house. The chime echoed inside the room again. Mia's breath caught in her throat. The porcelain house on her nightstand sat perfectly still, its tiny red door slightly ajar. She didn't remember placing it there. She didn't even remember owning it. She took a shaky step back. The soft bell sound repeated once more. And this time it was accompanied by something else. A whisper. Not in the air. Not in her ears. Inside her head. You opened the door, not with your hands. Body. Mia didn't sleep that night. She sat huddled in the corner of her bedroom, flashlight clutched in both hands, its beam trained on the porcelain house. Nothing else in the room moved, yet she felt constantly watched. Her phone screen had gone black. When she pressed the power button, nothing happened. It was as if every piece of technology in the house had died, except the old rotary phone. It rang again around 3:17 a.m. What? Then silence. As dawn bled weakly through her curtains, the fear didn't lift. It only changed shape, from sheer terror to a sickening, hollow dread that settled deep in her gut. By morning, she tried to convince herself that it was all a dream. The product of stress, of living alone, of grief and paranoia. She even laughed, nervously, brokenly, as she walked downstairs and made coffee with shaking hands. But when she returned to her bedroom, the music box was gone. Vanished. No sign of it. Not even dust where it had been. And on her pillow, a single black button. Cold. Perfectly round. Smooth like glass. She called a locksmith that afternoon and asked him to replace all the locks in the house. He showed up with tired eyes and the smell of tobacco clinging to his coat. She didn't care. She just wanted the locks changed. As he worked on the front door, she asked, "Have you ever heard of anything weird happening in this neighborhood?" He paused, glancing over his shoulder. Weird how? Like, people knocking on doors at night. Voices. His eyes darkened slightly. Used to be stories. Old ones. House on the hill, the one with the red shingles, caught fire about 15 years ago. Family never made it out. Some people say they still knock on doors, looking for someone to let them back in. Mia swallowed hard. How do you make them stop? He didn't answer. Just went back to his tools. Before he left, he looked her squarely in the eye and said, "If the knocking comes again, don't open. Even if you're sure it's someone you love." That night she double-checked every door and window. She locked them all. Covered the peephole. Blocked the curtains. She even put a chair under the front doorknob, like some childhood game of pretend safety. By 11:50 p.m. she was curled up on the sofa, dozing under a blanket, a kitchen knife under the cushion beside her. Then, a soft knock. One single knock. Not on the front door. Not upstairs. From the back door. Her eyes flew open. She held her breath. A second knock. Then a third, faster. Something in her began screaming, "Don't move. Don't speak. Don't even think." But curiosity, that terrible, fatal human instinct, won. She crept toward the back hallway, the wooden floor cold against her bare feet. She paused before the kitchen archway, back pressed against the wall. The knock came again, more urgent. 3, then 4 times. And then a voice. "Mia, please, it's me." It was her mother's voice. Mia staggered back. Her mother had died 3 years ago in a car accident. There was no mistaking that voice, warm, cracked, filled with the same soft pleading tones that had once soothed her to sleep. The door handle turned. She hadn't locked the back door. Panic seized her limbs. She darted forward and slammed her body against the door just as it began to open. Whatever was on the other side hit hard, but it didn't force its way in. It whispered instead. Over and over. "It's cold out here, why won't you let me in?" Tears streamed down her face. "You're not real," she whispered. Silence. Then the voice changed. Deeper. Hungrier. "But I am now." The door began to splinter. Wood cracked. Hinges squealed. Mia screamed and shoved her weight against it. She reached for the nearest thing on the counter, a salt shaker, and hurled it at the door. The sound it made as it shattered seemed to break the moment. The force on the other side stopped. Dead silence again. But on the inside of the door, written in black ash, were 4 words. "You already let us in." She didn't sleep for the next 48 hours. She stayed up, pacing, muttering, trying to piece it together. Who were they? How had she let them in? She burned sage. She read articles. She even called a local psychic, who never answered, but later left a voicemail of her own voice again whispering, "They're already here." Then came the final proof that it wasn't just in her head. On the third night, Mia heard her own recorded voice playing through the vent in the living room. Her own sobbing. Her own scream. On loop. She opened the vent grate and found the music box inside, the same porcelain house with the red door. This time the door was wide open. Inside it was a tiny black key. She didn't want to touch it. She wanted to throw it in the fireplace to crush it beneath her heel, but somehow, her hand moved on its own. She picked it up. And as soon as her fingers closed around the key, a knock. This time on the upstairs door. Her bedroom. The one she had locked 2 nights ago. She shouldn't have gone up. But she did. Every step was like dragging herself deeper into a grave. The house felt wrong now, stretched, distorted. The shadows no longer followed the laws of light. She stood before the bedroom door, key in hand. Her hand moved again, not of her own will, and she inserted the key into the lock. Fit. The lock clicked. She opened the door. At first there was nothing inside. Then her bedroom shifted before her eyes. The bed melted into darkness. The walls folded in. And something stepped forward, something not quite human wearing her face. But it wasn't her. The eyes were all wrong. Black. Reflective. Smiling too wide. "You invited us," it said in her voice. "You said yes when you moved here. The moment you crossed the threshold." Mia shook her head violently. "No, I didn't." The figure took a step forward, splitting in two. One stayed near the bed. The other circled her. "You unpacked your memories. You whispered your fears. That's all it takes. That's all we need." She backed away, but the room was melting now, walls oozing into each other like wet ink. Her head throbbed. Her ears rang. And in that moment her phone lit up. One new message, unknown number. Was a picture. Of her, sleeping in her bed. Tonight. Mia screamed. She turned to run, but the floor was gone. Darkness swallowed her. Vito. She woke up hours later on the floor of her living room, the TV flickering static in the dark. Her phone lay on the coffee table. New message. "We're in now. The door is you." She looked down. Her hands were black with soot. Her arms scratched and bruised. Her voice, when she tried to speak, came out wrong. And upstairs, something in her bedroom whispered in her voice. "Come back, Mia. Let's finish what you started." Mia stood in the hallway with shaking knees and a throat too dry to scream. Her bedroom was no longer a room. It had become something else. Something spatially impossible. A rotating space of shadow and whispers, each wall breathing like a lung, each floorboard pulsing beneath her. There were no light switches. No ceiling. No corners. And no door. But she had just opened one. That was the most terrifying part. Body. She backed away. She didn't dare turn around, fearing what might be behind her. The porcelain music box was gone again, no longer on the floor, not in her hands. But the black soot still stained her palms. She had the key. But now, there was no lock. Only the quiet murmur of voices, indistinct, just beyond human comprehension. Like memories that weren't hers, playing on a broken radio. The world had begun folding. Every hallway curved just slightly wrong. Every window reflected back not the world outside, but her face, with a different expression. Her reflection smiled when she frowned, blinked when she stared, moved when she didn't. By 4 a.m. she had found her way to the basement, the only part of the house she hadn't dared go yet. She kept it locked since she moved in. The smell from under the door always unnerved her, like earth after a storm, mixed with something coppery and spoiled. The key in her pocket burned against her leg. Her body moved as if guided by an invisible string. She unlocked the basement door and descended into the dark. The stairs creaked in long, heavy sighs. Each step deeper felt colder. Not temperature-wise, but spiritually. Like falling out of reality. She reached the bottom. At first she saw nothing. Then, slowly, her flashlight revealed hundreds of chalk markings on the basement walls. Symbols she couldn't read, drawn in messy circles, smudged handprints beside each one. Words scratched into wood. Do not answer. Do not look. Do not remember. A single mirror stood in the center of the floor, freestanding, tall and cracked, but reflecting nothing. No wall, no floor, no Mia. Then the mirror whispered, "We remember for you." She turned to run. But the staircase had vanished. Suddenly the flashlight flickered and died. The silence was suffocating. Then came the sound of footsteps, bare, slow, multiple sets. She crouched in the corner, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. A shape moved behind the mirror. Then several shapes. One stepped forward. It wore her face again, but now its skin was stretched tight like a mannequin, mouth stitched shut with thread. The thread pulsed with movement, like something alive squirmed beneath the stitches. Then a ripping sound. The stitched mouth tore open, and the creature whispered in her voice. "We're not outside anymore." The mirror behind it rippled, like water, and Mia saw something inside it, herself asleep on the sofa in the living room. But that couldn't be true. She was in the basement. Or was she? The figure lunged forward. Mia screamed, ducking away. Her shoulder hit the ground hard, and something sharp dug into her side. The porcelain house. It was back. Its red door wide open. Inside was a photo, yellowed and burned around the edges. She pulled it out. It was her. As a child. Standing in front of this house. She stared at it. Her knees buckled. No, this couldn't be. She had never been here before moving in last week. She grew up in the city. She didn't even know this town until recently. But in the photo she stood smiling, holding a red balloon. In the window behind her, a figure watched. A dark shape with two glowing eyes. The photo had words written on the back. "You let us in before." Suddenly the mirror cracked, splitting top to bottom. The room erupted in a groaning sound, like the house was alive and waking up angry. The walls began to breathe again, inhaling and exhaling in slow, threatening rhythm. Mia ran. She didn't know how or where, but the basement opened into a hallway she hadn't seen before. It was long, narrow, lit by flickering red lights, with dozens of doors on either side. Each door was labeled with a number. Each number pulsed faintly. Each one whispered. She passed doors labeled. 1, the first knock. 2, the voice you answered. 3, the moment you forgot. They weren't rooms. They were memories. Not all hers. She stopped at door 4. Her name was carved into it. Mia. She opened it. Inside was a perfect recreation of her childhood bedroom. The pale yellow walls. The small desk with crayon drawings. Her stuffed bear, Ollie, sitting on the pillow just like he used to. She stepped in slowly. Nothing seemed dangerous. Until she saw it. Sitting at her desk was her younger self, around 7 years old, drawing something frantically. The girl didn't look up. Her hand moved furiously, scribbling the same shape again and again. A red door. With black eyes behind it. Mia whispered, "What are you doing?" The girl didn't answer. Just kept drawing. Dozens of papers already covered the floor. Then she spoke softly. "They told me not to let them in. But I did. I opened it because I thought they were lost." Mia reached forward, and the girl turned. Her face was blank. Literally. No eyes. No mouth. Just pale skin. And yet the voice still came. "You opened it again, Mia. Now we're part of you." The lights in the room went out. When they came back on, she was alone. The room had changed. The bed was rotten. The wallpaper peeled with black mold. The drawings now showed her current home, and behind every window was a shadowy figure. She bolted. Back through the hallway. The doors pounded as she passed, as if the memories inside were desperate to be remembered. Her head throbbed with voices, children crying, doors slamming, whispers chanting her name. She burst out into the living room again. Except, it wasn't her living room. This version of her home was twisted. All wrong. The windows showed static. The walls were damp. And seated on the sofa was herself, sleeping. Exactly like the reflection in the mirror. She stepped forward slowly. Is this a dream? The sleeping version of her blinked, eyes open. Then smiled. A smile too wide. Unnatural. "You stayed in too long." Mia turned to run, but the front door was gone again. Only the chime remained. The doorbell echoing inside her mind again and again. Then the porcelain house dropped from the ceiling and shattered at her feet. From inside it crawled a pale, eyeless creature, whispering her name. Over and over. Mia. 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 The lights exploded. Everything turned black. Conclusion. Mia woke up screaming, this time outside. She was lying in her backyard, barefoot, shaking, covered in soot. The sun was rising. Birds chirped. Her house looked normal. She stood slowly. Tried the back door. Locked. She knocked, once by reflex. And inside, from the window, someone who looked exactly like her smiled and waved. Then closed the curtain. There's something worse than fear. Worse than the knocking. Worse than the whispers. It's knowing no one will ever come looking for you. Because they think you're still home. Because someone else is wearing your face. Mia stood barefoot in the dewy grass of her backyard, staring at the house she no longer recognized. The curtains in the living room window were now drawn, but she'd seen it, herself or something pretending to be her, waving from inside. She took a step forward. The lawn felt wrong. It squelched slightly like wet cloth, and the blades of grass seemed to shift subtly with her footsteps, leaning toward her. Listening. She reached for the back door handle. It burned her. She jerked her hand away, staring at the faint black imprint on her skin. The metal was ice cold, yet it hissed against her flesh like fire. From inside the house she heard it again. The doorbell. Only this time, it was ringing nonstop. As if someone, or something, inside was inviting something else in. Desperate, Mia stumbled around to the front yard. The street was quiet. Too quiet. No passing cars. No breeze. Even the birds had stopped chirping. Her house sat alone like it had always been there. But the sky looked off, like it had been painted hastily, the clouds smeared like brush strokes, frozen in time. She pounded on the front door. "Let me in." A soft voice answered. Her own voice. "You already are." And then she heard it, from behind her. A faint giggle. She spun around. There, by the edge of the woods behind her property, stood a little girl. Pale, barefoot, wearing a white dress covered in dirt. Her eyes were completely black. She clutched something in her hand. It was the porcelain house. The girl tilted her head and smiled. "They said you'd come back." Mia took a step forward. "Who are you?" The girl just turned and ran into the trees. Against every shred of reason, Mia followed. The forest behind her home stretched endlessly. It shouldn't have, she'd walked it before. It was no more than half a mile deep. But now it twisted, curved, and folded in on itself, like it was breathing with her panic. Branches curled like claws. The deeper she walked, the more unnatural the trees became, smooth, bone-white bark with symbols carved into them. After what felt like hours, she reached a clearing. At the center stood a small wooden shed. And in front of it, dozens of porcelain houses, identical to the one that kept appearing around her. Each had a name scratched beneath it. She stepped closer. One read, Kara. Another, Julian. Another, M.I. Multiple versions of her name. Written again and again. She opened the shed door. Inside were mirrors. Dozens. Each one reflected different versions of herself. Older. Younger. Injured. Smiling. Screaming. Some were missing eyes. Some were stitched at the mouth. Some clawed at the glass as she looked in, begging to be let out. One mirror was different. It showed her house. Her real house. Not the twisted version she had been trapped in. In the window she saw a woman. An old woman. She gasped. Grandma? Her grandmother had died when she was 15. But there she was, sitting calmly in the window, knitting, humming a song Mia remembered from childhood. Then she looked up, and met Mia's eyes through the mirror. She mouthed something. Mia leaned in closer. Wake up. Suddenly the mirror shattered. A scream, hers? Someone else's? Echoed through the shed, shaking the porcelain houses. They began to crack, one by one, releasing faint black smoke from their windows. The forest began to wail. The trees twisted. The wind screamed like it was in agony. Mia turned to run, clutching the only intact house, the one with her name. As she ran, the trees bled black sap. Faces formed in the bark. Her own voice whispered from every direction. Let me in. Let me out. Let me remember. She burst out of the woods and found herself back at her house. Only this time it looked normal. Birds chirped. A car drove past. A neighbor, Mrs. Kemper, watered her plants across the street. Mia's hands trembled. Was it over? She walked up the porch steps and knocked. Just once. The door opened. And there she stood, herself, apron on, hair tied back, holding a glass of juice. Hey, the other Mia smiled. Took you long enough. Mia's throat went dry. What are you? The other Mia laughed. Don't be dramatic. You're the visitor. I live here now. You traded places, remember? Mia backed up. No, I didn't. I didn't agree to this. Oh, but you did, she said sweetly. You opened the door that night. You answered the knock. You picked up the key. You went into the basement. I was trying to stop it. The other Mia stepped forward, still smiling. And yet here you are. Holding it. Mia looked down. She was still clutching the porcelain house. But now, the red door was sealed shut. The other Mia's smile dropped. Oh, that's unfortunate. A sharp ringing pierced the air, the doorbell. The front door behind the other Mia slammed shut. The sky darkened instantly, clouds rolling in like smoke. The neighbor across the street froze, water pouring endlessly from her hose. You're not supposed to still have that, other Mia whispered. The house groaned behind her. The windows shattered in unison. Mia's porcelain house cracked. She screamed and hurled it against the porch. It shattered, and everything stopped. For a moment the world froze. Colors inverted. Sound vanished. Gravity loosened. Mia collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. When she looked up again, she was inside the house. Alone. But something was different. The furniture was draped in white sheets. Dust covered every surface. The walls were yellowed. The air smelled like mothballs and dried flowers. Then she heard it. A heartbeat. Not hers. She turned toward the staircase. Someone stood at the top. Not a figure. Not a shadow. A version of herself, old, frail, dressed in a hospital gown. Mia whispered, "What is this?" The old woman stepped down the stairs, slowly, painfully. Her eyes were clouded but aware. Her voice was raspy. "You shouldn't be here." "I never agreed to this," Mia said. "No," the woman said, "but your fear did." "I don't understand." The old woman reached the bottom step. "This house isn't haunted. It's hungry. It needs guests, but only the ones who invite themselves in." Mia staggered back. "Then how do I leave?" The woman touched her face gently. "You don't. But you can choose who takes your place." She smiled. And Mia saw it. She wasn't old. She was empty. Her skin cracked like porcelain. The woman's face fell off, revealing the stitched, eyeless version from the mirrors. Mia screamed. She awoke on the floor again. This time the porcelain house was fully intact. Inside the red door, a slip of paper. One sentence written in blood. "Next time, don't answer." And outside the front door the bell rang once. Someone else had come. Someone new. And the house waited to be fed. There are places that trap time. Places that remember you. Not like a person remembers, with feeling, but like a parasite, clinging to what fed it. Mia wasn't sure how long it had been since the doorbell first rang. Because here, midnight never ended. Mia stared at the porcelain house in her hands, flawless again. Red door shut tight. No cracks. No whispers. Just waiting. She was no longer sure if she was real. Her breath fogged no glass. Her reflection blinked too slow. And sometimes, when she turned corners, she caught glimpses of herself stepping away instead of following. The house, or whatever lived within it, was feeding off her. Every fear. Every regret. Every version of herself. And worst of all, she wasn't alone anymore. That night, or what passed for night in the twisted dimension of her house, the doorbell rang again. But it didn't come from the front door. It came from the walls. A low ding-dong, echoing from every floorboard, every socket, every mirror. Like the house was ringing itself. She followed the sound, step by slow step, until she reached the attic, a place she'd never dared enter. The wooden stairs creaked like bones. Cobwebs danced in the air. Dust hung so thick it felt like breathing skin. The attic was massive. Bigger than it should be. And in the center, a table. On it, a second porcelain house. Identical to the one she held. Next to it, a mirror. Tall. Fogged. And behind it, movement. Someone pacing. Mia stepped closer and gasped. It was her. But not like before. Not stitched or faceless. Not possessed. This version looked alive. Real. Oh. The Mia in the mirror was trying to get out. She mouthed something. Mia leaned closer. "Help me." Mia reached out, placing a hand on the glass, and it burned. Her skin hissed, but she didn't pull away. The other Mia placed her hand over it from the inside. Then whispered, "One must stay. One must leave." Behind her, something clicked. She turned and he was there. Not a ghost. Not a demon. A tall man in an old-fashioned suit. No face. Just blackness beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He didn't speak. But she heard his voice inside her skull. "The house chooses. It keeps who wanders. It frees who replaces." She backed toward the mirror. "You want me to become it. You already are." The porcelain house on the table opened. Its red door swung wide. Inside, her voice. Not words. Not sentences. Just sobbing. The mirror Mia screamed, banging against the glass. The house was pulling her in. Mia turned to the man. "If I stay, she goes free?" No answer. Only the chime. Ding-dong. The attic door behind her slammed shut. Then slowly, the room began to collapse. The walls folded in. The mirror cracked. The floorboards unraveled into darkness. And Mia knew. She was standing at the heart of the house. And it was alive. It didn't want her to leave. It wanted her to belong. She felt it crawling into her, not physically but emotionally, whispering memories she didn't want. Her regrets. Her worst moments. Her sins. Even the things she forgot, it remembered them all. And just when she thought she would break, a sound. So simple. So human. A knock. On the attic floor. She dropped to her knees. A hatch. A door in the floor she'd never seen before. The knocking came again. But not threatening this time. It was desperate. A child's voice whispered through the floorboards. "Please, let me out." She opened it. Inside was a boy. No older than 10. Pale, trembling. Covered in dirt. He looked up at her, his eyes wide with shock. "I didn't think anyone would ever come." Mia reached down and pulled him out. "What's your name?" "Eli," he whispered. "I've been here so long. I didn't know how to leave." "Neither do I," she said. He pointed at the porcelain house. "That's the way. You break it. But it always comes back." He looked at her, shaking. "You have to mean it. Break it, and don't regret it. Not even a little. Or it reforms." Suddenly the attic shuddered. The suited man was gone. But the walls pulsed with hunger. "You have to choose," Eli said. "The house takes someone. That's the rule." Mia looked at the mirror again. The other version of her had stopped banging. She just stood there now. Silent. Accepting. Mia turned to the porcelain house. And slammed it to the floor. Shattered. For real. No reforming. No whispers. Just silence. And then the mirror turned to light. Blinding golden light. It poured into the attic, tearing through shadows, erasing every corner of the twisted house. The stitched faces, the melted furniture, the doors that led nowhere, all burned away like nightmares at dawn. The light touched Mia, and it hurt. Because it was real. Because it reminded her who she was. She screamed but didn't run. She stood in it, letting it tear the house out of her. And then, she opened her eyes. Mia was lying on her living room floor. Sunlight spilled through the curtains. The real sunlight. Her hands were clean. Her voice was hers. The front door stood peacefully closed. She sat up. Outside, children rode bikes. A dog barked. A car engine started. She stood. Walked to the door. Looked through the peephole. Nothing. Just the empty porch. And then her phone buzzed. One new message. From a number that read, "Unknown." She opened it. It was a photo. Of the house. From the outside. And in the window. A girl. Pale. Dirt-stained. Holding a porcelain house. She was smiling. "You can leave the house, Mia. But the house doesn't leave you."